So Brittany,
Rachel.
uh, we had an amazing conversation with Jana Thuaud this morning. Well, it was
I
my morning. It was very early morning for me, but it was like mid-afternoon for you.
It was lovely. It was a 1 PM call, and usually when we record, it's like 5 or 6, which is also not super late, but is later, so it was a lovely 1 PM call for me, and it was a 6 AM call for you, so you win the early podcasting award. Um,
Yeah,
I I loved talking to Jana. I love talking to people like Jana because she is clearly very passionate about what she does, but is also an example of she didn't really think of herself as a cammer. She wanted to be a scientist and she had this interest in mangroves and she wanted to do this kind of environmental stuff. And then when knowledge management was kind of pushed at her, she was like, no, no, I'm an environmentalist. I do this thing. But it shows you that you can have technical expertise in one area, but still do knowledge management and do it really well.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
world needs people like that. So she is a KM specialist for the International Union for the Conservation of Nature and also a KM and research specialist for the Green Growth Knowledge Partnership. So she is putting her technical expertise and also her KM expertise in practice for something that she really cares about. She was super passionate about the topic of products versus process, which I
yeah,
thought was great.
yeah. No, like totally just passion and funny. And I think we could have talked to her for like another 3 hours, honestly.
Hours. Hours, yes.
Yeah, no, totally. If I didn't have to like bring my kids to school, I would have stayed. But honestly, like I, we're so lucky to be able to have these conversations with people, and this just affirms it. Like just great conversations. And Jana is somebody you should know. I want to say rising star potential, but the mangroves, like I was like blown away by the depth of knowledge about mangroves and just how much KM goes behind it. And
Yes, I
nothing I
actually
ever would
learned a
have thought
lot.
about. Yeah, nothing I ever would have thought about ever, at least in that context anyway. And then her path, like her journey, just, a little bit of rebellion in there, a little bit.
Mhm.
Loved that. Love that. Some spiciness, but in the best possible way. So it's cool. Everybody needs to be your friend. I'd say without any further ado, listen to and enjoy Jana Chuo. Roll the intro.
What's the point of another KN podcast? Well, I tell you, we've got every kind of point, like power and share, laser and main, bullet and prize, focus and pain, power and share, laser and main, bullet and prize, focus and pain. Not another KN podcast. Not an FMOAM podcast. Not another KN podcast. Not just any other KN podcast.
I got a job in the government, Department of Environment and Natural Resources. But then it was fun, but it was, how do you say, too big for me. So I went
Mm.
off and joined an NGO called the Philippine Business for Social Progress. And I joined as a program officer. Okay. In those days, we had what was called integrated area management programs. Knowledge management was not heard of. But I was the youngest and I was the most energetic. So they said, okay, Jana, take minutes of meetings every time. Minutes of meetings, documentation, photography. I was a master documenter for everything. So but it was great because I got, Philippines 7,107 islands, right? So
Mhm,
I was
mhm.
able to travel across my country in 2 years. I think I just didn't go to the top part, but from the north to the south. And so it allowed me to see people, meet people, different people, hear languages that I've never heard of aside from my language, because Philippines, right? And then ended up saying, hey, this is a great career. What's next? Maybe I should go into education. So after NGO, I went to the education field. I'm a Jesuit, and I crossed over to the LaSallian brothers. So the LaSallian brothers, John Baptiste de La Salle, he's French. He's an expert educator in the Catholic realm. So, and they're the biggest rival of the Jesuits in Manila. So fun because I think we were only three in that department, Social Action Center. I was the first one who said, we should really have a curriculum for training people how to do formation properly. Jesuit, eh. So Jesuits like order. Okay. So we were the first one. So I led that team where we had the proper curriculum, proper way of documentation, and proper way of evaluation. Fast forward later on, we have after action review, or baselining, di ba? Like that's what we say in KM. But
Mhm.
just did that. And again, 3 years finished. It's NGO mindset, eh. It's like 3 years, 3 years. There's only you can do so much. You help them, and
Mhm.
then you move on and help. Okay, that was I think tsunami 2004. The Asian tsunami hit.
Mm.
Right, so a lot of development aid funds came in to Asia. And I think I hit already that top level for the center I was working with. So one of our closest friends who also work in the development sphere said, "Hey Jana, I'm moving on from my post. I'm in the development world, but in the corporate arm, business development, we need somebody with your organization skills. So why don't you come over?" Because there was a lot of funds coming from USAID, the UN, Aid, and they needed somebody to organize CVs,
Mm.
all the consultants, and basically a pipeline for all of the projects that's coming in. So in short, I joined that international company, but it's a private sector firm. So did that for 3 years, organized it, stumbled onto a scholarship offered by the New Zealand government. So the New Zealand government made this call for development professionals for different aspects. So you have physics, chem, and geography. I thought, okay, geography, maybe GIS. No, it's cultural geography. I said, even better, I can go back to mangroves, right? So went back to New Zealand, studied that. And that was, I think, the time when 2008, 2009, KM was becoming formalized as a field
Mhm.
through the AE,
Mhm.
the World Bank. But I didn't pay attention because I wanted to go back to science, right? I wanted to go into management of science policy. Because what we noticed was in the Philippines, lots of development programs, oh my goodness, by the millions, ADB alone, you can look it up, 69 million US went for 1 year for just planting mangroves without the science. So it's literally off with the tide because people were planting on the literal scene, and that's not where the mangroves live. The mangroves lived in the mud in between
Mm,
the fresh and the
the
salt
brackish.
water.
Right.
But because it's easy and it's nice to photograph, very Instagrammable, everybody landed along the coast. So I said, no, we need science and management to get married. So I did that. And that's where I earned the title Cultural Geography because it's really looking at the power of place and space and voice
I love it.
to forward your agenda. So, got my degree, fantastic. This time I joined the ministry happily. And I remember my HR, she's a lovely Filipino woman. And she's saying, Anak, daughter, are you really sure? Yes, but your chief, he doesn't have a master's degree. You do, you have two. I said, it doesn't matter, ma'am. I want to join the ministry. So I joined Coastal Marine Management Office. And guess what my first job is? Document all the laws and regulations about mangroves in the Philippines, which we did. But that was good because we submitted that to the secretary, and the secretary organized it into a bill. And it's now all the mangroves in the Philippines are protected because of that. So that was great. That was happy. So I got headhunted by one of the international organizations in Bangkok called IUCN. So I'm sure you've heard about it. International Union for Conservation of Nature. And in 2010, they were one of the initiators, organizers for a multi-UN level and multi-stakeholder investment program for mangroves in South. And that's where they said, Jana, can you be a knowledge management officer? I said, sorry, sir, I'm an environmental scientist and I'm a program officer. So I don't know if I can do KM because KM, in those days, we thought we were IT professionals. I don't know anything about Drupal because they wanted me to manage the website, Drupal, Silver Stripe, all that. No, no, it's okay. We need somebody who understands mangroves. Okay, I can do that. So I had to move to Bangkok. Uh, okay, first day, right? Left my life in the Philippines, hugged my parents, and said, okay, Lord, you be with me. Went there, my teacher, who was formerly my mentor in Mangroves, Jana, I'm glad you're here. You're the new KM officer. Here's a hard drive. Do your job. I was like, huh? Yeah, because the last officer just put everything in this hard drive and we need somebody to manage the materials there. Now, I wasn't a knowledge manager, but instinct tells me that's not knowledge. That's not knowledge. But truth be told, that was really my first job. And I remember because I really loved that mentor of mine. And he's a very good Mangrove author. His name is Donald McIntosh, very well respected. But really, in those days, what was KM but information management renamed? I have to be honest. That was really what it was. And the KM officer is normally the assistant of the comms manager. So I was under comms because they wanted
Mm.
material to promote on the website, to package for donors. Yeah. And so we were very product orientated. What they actually meant when they said, here's a hard drive, means organize that hard drive, see if there's something we can get from it and make it into a publication. Because that was really the onus of IUC in Asia at that time. We were the science for the conservation world. And I think we did that. But I think 2 weeks in the job, I said, who's the HR here? Who can I talk to? And they all like, what happened? Did somebody bully you? No, no. I just want to check, who do I need to talk to understand who talks to who. So
Mhm.
I understood already that knowledge management is not explicit, it's not passive. It really is all about who are the people wielding the power, who are the people wielding the influence, and who knows it. People in their people's heads. So I was an ES major, and in IUCN, this is real. We are still bound by our degrees, our variation as well. If you're a doctor in serpentology, you have to manage the reptile program. If you're a doctor in mangroves, you have to manage ecosystem. But I'm a KM officer under comms. I have nothing, right? So I did reading, and we found ADB. So ADB at that time, they have this knowledge compendium, and then later on World Bank. And then, so we started from there, we being myself and the comms manager. 3 years later, we actually have a KM and communication strategy. So that was very painful for me, but it was a great learning for
Mhm.
because I realized it was really the people around me who helped me advance knowledge management. It just took guts. I don't have any degrees to books to design this, but I think what garnered their attention to our program was we were able to mobilize 14 countries who were otherwise very, how do you say, territorial. Like this is Southeast Asia, this is South Asia, and this is North Africa because Seychelles and some of the islands were also affected by the tsunami. We have different cultures, so we don't have anything common to work with. No, we just organize something simple. We call it the KMC calls, check in every month. We just talk about what did we do in our project, what can we promote, how can we do this. And then we have a website nobody uses, but no, we update it. Exactly. I mean, this is it's a website, right? It's a bulletin board. But how do we, make people interact? Give them,
Mhm.
give them a page, let them upload their documents, and they did. And actually, Sri Lanka ran away with it. So that was from 2010 to 2008. We had 3 phases because products were being developed, products being fact sheets, publications, news articles online. It wasn't really how do you say, peer-reviewed scientific articles, but the donors could see it. And at that time, the donors were Scandinavia, so Nordics, and they really loved this from the ground approach. This was the days before our time when, you know, development was turned on its head, right? It was really development people were 2008. All this while, I got married, gave birth to two children, and family life, right? But then it takes a toll. Sometimes in my journey, I said, okay, I think I reached at that pinnacle. So I worked with IUCN for a long time. And then I tried to work with a local university wanting to localize knowledge. But then life happens, right? So my husband gets a job in France, coming back to his roots. So we had to move. And I said, that's fine. I think it's good. It's a good time. I can do my writing. That's when I learned about KMI, so Knowledge Management Institute. Yeah. Because I said, okay, I have all of this time taking care of my kids, just settling abroad. What can I do? I said, why don't I polish up in AM? Because it's something I have and closer to a PhD, but not yet because I'm not ready
Mhm.
to commit the time. And I met John.
John.
Yes.
I saw you, Rachel. You also did
I
a cameo
he
in one of our courses, but it was Ruven Pakiri who was our course director.
Okay.
And what I liked about the way KMI did it was it's transformational KM. It's really close to my development heart because I said, if I'm going to be employed, and it's hard to look for employment here in France, huh? If I don't have, I can speak conversational level, but there's so many other factors that prevent me from getting a permanent job. And it's a big deal here in France for permanent. But that's okay. In this day and age, 2026, I believe that we can be flexible and the world has no boundary. Okay.
Mhm.
AM, right? So my old folks from IUCN, they were working on this big facility project. In Brittany, I know you know this, but I'm not going to say the name, but it's really big, multi-million, multi-stakeholder. And this is Anna, we need something like MFF, Mangroves for the Future. What you did for the 14 countries, you want to do it for the other one, but in the Malaysian area. Okay, fine. So I did the KM paper, but then already looking at the product, the KM that they wanted was product orientated. What are the products? They want a website, they want a community of practice online, and they want lessons learned publications. I think that's great. Do you have any funds to have baselining? Like what's the state of knowledge there? What do they really want to know? Why are we putting the website? No, no, that's for the next phase. I said, no, no, it's not for the next phase. It's the before phase. But then, no, you just have to put it because we need to pass it, okay? All right, deadlines, I get that. So we did something with the big caveat that whatever it is we're going to plan for the project has to be preceded by a base. Done, submitted, don't hear from them, right? Okay. But something came up and it was really great because it says knowledge management specialist for circular economy. So I said, hey, I've never been in that realm. I've always been drawn to waste management, even during my planeteer days, in the mangroves, right? The
Mhm.
mangroves are the ones who catch the debris. Me, I want to do it now because I have children. For example, I'm very afraid of buying stuff that are no lead infused toys.
Mhm.
It's very difficult, especially if you have a toddler and then puts everything in the mouth. I don't want anything that are chemical laced. Then when you throw things, where does it go? Anyway, circular economy, I said, okay, don't, that's not my forte, but fine. Interview, right? And it's so amazing how KM is really valued by different organizations. You have a TOR, okay, set TOR is again, knowledge product, website, communities of practice. All right. But the conversations for this, Jana, have you had any experience convening meetings online? I said yes. Have you had any experience making connections across multilingual environments? Yes. Great. Do you have any qualms working on different time zones? No. Okay, you're hired. Wow. Right. Okay. But I want to work on the circular economy side. No, no, no. You won't work on circular economy. You're working on the marine side, islands. That's why my project is called Islands. It's actually implementing sustainable and low chemical development for small island developing states. So I don't want to work with marine environment anymore. I work with that 20 years already. I want something new. Yes, but we want to draw on your expertise. And in fact, this was a year ago.
Mm.
Because it's in our favorite realm in that part of the world. This was before the time of the big shakeup. Okay, I'm gonna be very honest. Development in international organizations
Yeah.
are not the same after 2025.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shakeups going on, funding wise, and we have all of these perturbations around geopolitics and all that. But the good thing about this project is they have KM at the forefront, right? It started with the same thing: knowledge product orientated, website, communities of practice. I don't like it, but we have to do it. So what did we do? This was 2025. Then, of course, like happens, staff turnovers. The only people left behind were, surprise, surprise, the KM officer and the communication specialist. Only these two left, right? Then we were managed by the top level, which is, as you know, with any CEO, he also manages everything else. So we would have 1% of the attention for KM and comms, right? What
Mhm.
turned the tide? I think what turned the tide was again that coalescing of people, not because of we're good at what we do, but it's really we don't know where to start. Jana, we're delayed with project deliverables. We don't know how to even think about knowledge because what we want is to communicate what we're doing so the donor will know that we're doing well. But we can't talk about products right now. We don't have knowledge, quote unquote. And I'm smiling inside to myself because I said, this is such a great place to begin. Because if the people understand that they don't have knowledge, they don't understand that they're already halfway. So we started with that, doing the theory. And I remember my comms counterpart said, Jana, enough with the theory, man. Just go with action, set the date, do the activity. I said to her, we can't not plan. We have to give them this. We have to tell them the story because if they know the why, then they will plan. And that turnkey moment happened last year. We invested 11 months saying the same story. The why. Why are we doing this? Why do we need to capture? Why do we need to store? Why do we need to make the connections? Finally, after November, they said, okay, we're appointing a KM focal point and a comms focal point. Remember, they don't have budget for these two things. But our project manager will sit, our project assistant manager will sit, and every month talk about it. That was November. Today is what? March? We
Mhm.
finally have a lineup of all the information activities you want to do all the way to December. And they're rushing to be the co-host because they know that it will be broadcasted to our basic website. But now people are looking at our website. And then the home organization is noticing what we're doing and is inviting our head to be part of the funded communications activities of their organization. So what's my takeaway there? I mean, KM could be the fancy IT unit in some organizations. And in fact, in our organization, it is. We have the AI officer, the designer, UX designer person. But at the end of the day, it's the KM team with different roles that actually pushes forward knowledge flow. So back to what I was saying earlier, why knowledge products and why do CEOs are why focus on that? It's because it's the what's in it for them. Like for them, they want recognition, they want credibility, and they want to just feel good about what you do. And that's what I'm seeing happen now. And our story isn't finished yet. I'm still very new in this project. I'm still a consultant. So I'm not really part of the team, but I'm feeling I'm part of the team. And that's why I really love this field because it's all about people and it's about integrated project management, if you like.
One of the things that I was really interested in, you kind of touched on it already, but why in the year of our Lord 2026, leaders are still defaulting to these kind of more traditional tactics? Let's do a webinar, let's have a repository. Why do you think that is still, you know, the comfort zone for leaders?
I like that question because it's easy. It's the easiest way to quantify. It's the easiest way to program. It's predictable. Huh?
Mhm.
And I have to say this, I have a little team. Um, we're all consultants and we're handling different stuff. She's doing the community of practice online platform, but she's a DRR specialist, disaster risk and response. Okay. But she dabbles on Drupal. So she got assigned to that. But Why exactly? Because, for example, the current funding portfolio. Okay, the current funding portfolio, it's very interesting how it's still tied to the KPIs. Dare say that. What are the indicators that our money, our taxpayers' money, is really bringing this effect on the beneficiaries?
Mm.
If I can be very frank. And if you have a website, or if one organization has a website, there's analytics. And I remember I was part of a meeting, and it's a regional committee meeting where people approve budgets, right? And then we're the task team for presenting what have we done in terms of advancing knowledge flows, right? So we have beautiful story, beautiful slides, all our pillars, web analytics. Of all the 12 slides we presented, the head of program just fixates on one chart in the slide, which is the web analytics part. And my comms analyst goes, "Yeah, it's true, but can you break that down? Break that down for what? Which countries are actually clicking on your website? And which profile?" And we were like bogged, because this is a program meeting. We should be talking about strategic things. But later on, during the conversations with our task team, we said, no, this guy wants these answers, because what he's actually hitting on is it culturally relevant? The platforms that we're using. We're talking to Pacificans here who are not even looking at desktop websites. Internet is not reliable, possibly in that outer island out there. I'm not saying this, but this came from them. We actually did a focus group discussion with all 13 Pacific Island countries, and for them they said, we have no problem with internet. It's just that we don't use it for our work. We don't use your website. It's nice to have, but it's not part of our work. So that actually speaks volumes. How do we make it part of your work? Well, go
Mhm.
to the schools. They said, we want to impact schools. We want materials for schools. Not us at the ministry. Us at the ministry, we're doing a lot of things already. So we want our schools to be using our website. So big pivot on our tone, right? So I think that's the quick answer to that. Why in 2026 people are still doing that? Because it's the default. It's easy. It's
Mhm.
comfortable. But that's
Mhm.
a follow up for that. Yeah. What's the antithesis to that? And this is what I'm challenging my chief. But I like her because she's a social scientist, and what she wants is really to see knowledge impact. She wants to see 5 years from now, how do we know that our webinar on mercury poisoning, or the hazards of mercury, actually help a high schooler who then takes up chemistry and becomes a ministry officer down the road? She's thinking long term. So I'm excited by that. So I don't know how it goes.
If you figure out how to do that, let us know. We'll have you back on and we can have a conversation. Because that's the dream, right? To be able to say that because this person attended this webinar, they applied this knowledge and they were able to change this part of their life, or they were able to make an impact in their community, or they were able to do this, they were able to solve this problem more quickly than had they before. And those are the types of follow-ups that don't really ever happen. We do these things that are like, how did you feel
Right.
about the webinar? Was it useful? Would you attend something again? But we don't really do those follow-ups 6 years, 6 months, 1 year, did you apply anything? What have you learned? How have you like expanded on what you learned? And I think that yeah, if that's something you can crack, that would be amazing. We could learn from
Oh yeah,
you.
Rachel, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, it's this idea between impact versus influence, and that kinda
Mhm.
came to mind with this because you hear impact, and of course you have that, the what's the impacts long term, but the influence piece is there too, because if you can have these little pieces of influence that help just feed the change as it
Mm.
works through, right? But, in that case, the long-term impact makes total sense because if you can have the impact of this to outlast it, and you have a kid being able to make these long-term changes, it's incredible. If you can even just have the influence with the KM in this environment where you can, you know, go and drop it in where folks are using it and
Yeah.
make those influences long term.
And I want to share this, and I think it's in one of my questions. How do we really get KM to that level of
Yeah.
transformation? KM, right? And I always go back to this. I had a KM colleague, and I consider her my mentor. In one of my projects, she said, always use plain language.
Yes.
Always use plain language, because KM at the very end of it for me, just to be very honest about it, it's a tool. It's
Yeah.
our, how do you say? I was having this conversation with a midterm review person. Uh, he's amazing. He's from Ecuador, and his first question is, Jana, I read the project document. I read your logical framework, but there's something missing. It's like, what is the change? What is the knowledge change? What will happen? What do you plan to do after? What was the baseline? What was zero level? And what would be the 10-year mark, right? How do you know there's a change? And what do you have as equipment or tools? Is it your website? Is it your publications? And I had to say, pause. Okay. Let's say his name is Jose. Okay. Jose, are you familiar with Thermomix? Yes. Okay. You know chopping board and knife? Yes. We're there. We're in the knife and chopping board yeah, we're not yet at Thermomix. No, seriously, because for me, if you don't have the ingredients, if you don't know the dish, why would you
Right.
go to Thermomix? I mean, Thermomix will have a Bible of all of these beautiful recipes, right? But it's what you want to eat. It's what you want to taste. And I think, Rachel, this was when you came in during our class with Ruben, I think we were talking about the knowledge continuity. Okay?
Yes. Yeah.
We were saying turnover. We're talking about turnover, and then we have all of this young blood who's like so
Yeah.
eager to get into the knowledge train. But then we have the seniors who's like, I'm getting ready to retire, but they have all of this stock knowledge, right?
Mm.
So to
Yep.
get from knife and chopping board to Thermomix, you have to have that kind of blend. You have to have the young kids who's so energetic in prepping all of those onions, but you have to have the chef who knows, no, it's better with Worcestershire sauce. No, it's better with soy sauce. These are the two kinds of people that we need, but we don't have that yet in our project, telling Jose. So you say, what do you need? Install a knowledge management focal point. If you don't have a budget, it doesn't matter. Just make sure the function is there, because then somebody will have to keep thinking, why are we doing this? Why are we even collecting the numbers for how many webinars did we do? How many
Right.
people attended? How many publications did we print? For me, that's my pet peeve. My my chief would always go every quarter. Oh, how many webinars did we do? Why?
Right.
Why?
I mean,
Why? No, seriously, I was thinking, why would we do 12 webinars? Because the logical framework says it? No, we have to go back to the people and ask them, what kind of webinars do you need, right? And the
right.
honest answer was, we don't need any because we're busy implementing our own projects. But,
Yeah.
this is the big but if you're going to organize something that would inform the way we're doing things, then we would be interested. For example, the big project now, circular economy, e-waste, right? Oh, mobile phones, mobile phones. Who was it who said in the Pacific that there's more mobile phones in the landfill than people in the outer islands? The outer islands
Wow.
is to go figure, for example, 300 people. So there are more mobile phones in the landfill. We need those kinds of stories to just show the impact. And then what do? We have the Basel and Rotterdam Stockholm Convention, and we get nerdy all about these things. But it exists. We have institutions and policy institutions that already give you the recipe of what to do. But then if your dish is really just a saute, you don't give them the Bible, right? You just need onions, garlic, tomato. That's it. So in the focus of for example, the Pacific Islands, no, we just want mercury because there's a big threat of mercury to our health.
Mhm.
So we want a webinar on mercury. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Again, going back to the organization, I don't know, Rachel, if you had this in your organization, we would always have those people would say, yeah, but we need the number of webinars. We need the dates. We need metrics.
Yeah.
Okay. So I said, and stop planning. And they always tell me, you plan. I said, if we don't plan, we won't know where to go. And now they're
Mhm.
seeing it. So we did invest 11 months on the planning, but now we're reaping the reward. And that's KM for me. It's really why? What for? What's the call to action? I mean, why are we doing this website thing? And I love it when somebody said, maybe the platform is not the answer. Maybe the answer is, what are we going to do with the platform? Or do we even need the platform? Maybe we just need email. And in fact, one region said, we're over 50 and We just want email. We don't want to go to this fancy mobile thing you're developing. We understand AI, but we don't need it. We just want email. We start where they are. And
Yeah.
then, like, how do you say? I love the kitchen analogy because,
Oh, I use it too. I use kitchens all
Yep.
the time in KM.
I
Yeah.
mean, okay, I'll go to my children. My child just loves Thai omelette and rice. Thai omelette and rice. He can eat that every day. But then we start introducing pepper on the omelet, then tomatoes, and then, gradual, until later on, oh, now he's eating beef stroganoff. Mama, we had beef stroganoff in the canteen. Wow. So stuff like that, we introduce little by little. And then maybe, just maybe, and I think in the community practice as well, we had this, like what level of strategy are going to offer. KM strategy, the documented one. Well, it really depends on the context of your organization. So, at least for our project, our strategy is design a knowledge ecosystem that would bring together digital and in-person pathways. That's it. That's strategy. And then if you want to read about it, here's how it's unpacked. But we don't have all those paragraph 1, section 2, paragraph 3, section. We used to have that, but nobody really reads it. So, yeah, I guess that's it.
You feel very strongly about this, and I think we're with you. We're
Yeah,
all on the
100%.
same page with this. But given what you just said about, how can KM really bring out that transformational change that we know that it can and we know that it should. So based on that, if you could redesign KM from scratch in an international organization, if you could redesign it from scratch, what would be the first thing that you would get rid of?
Get
Is
Ooh,
it
that's a
rid of
good
products? Is
one.
it
No,
like
that's not where I
what
thought you
would
were
you
going.
what's the what
administration. My next 6 months salary is banking on this. No, how do we say this? What to get rid of? Oh wow, get rid of the jargon. I mean, that's the first thing I would do. And I really have this vision, and I told this to our C-suite people. Like open, honest thing. I said, can we just have a roll up your sleeves in like a storyboard meeting? Like what is it that we set out to do? Just draw it there. When we wrote this in 2019, it was before the pandemic. Everything was beautiful, right?
Mhm.
Then the pandemic happened, and then everything else happened. Now we're in 2026, and we're still at 27% implementation. Something's not working, right? So what would I get rid of? It's get rid of the jargon. Get rid of the, how do you say, clinginess to the past.
Yeah.
Get rid of, yeah, because it's my baby, and no, the baby's a teenager now. It has different needs. Seriously, that's really, in any program. I've seen so many programs in development world. It's really about this legacy mindset. So if
Yes.
if we were gonna redesign KM 2026, like at this point, let's say tomorrow the donor says, Jana, I want a concept note, 1-pager, design KM for our facility. Oh, wow. First thing, get rid of the past.
Mhm.
And then infuse something new. How? Get the key people who's really working on comms, KM, ME, monitoring and evaluation. The finance person, the budget guy, because the budget guy really needs to be in the room. And then the one who calls the shots, the CEO. Just 5 people. So get rid of all of the IT yet. We don't need IT yet in the beginning. IT will come later. We need the people who think about where do we want to go from here. And then these 5 people can design a vision first. Where do we want to go? Who do we want to work with? And then what are the things we want to be remembered for? Just
Mm,
there's 5 people, 3 things.
yep.
That's
I really
great.
like that. What do we want to be remembered for? We had a conversation. We just recorded an interview with someone who he's really into strategic planning and like foresight and future thinking. And that was something is what in the future, like what do we want to be remembered for? What is what I'm doing right now? How am I going to reflect on that what is future me going to reflect on, when I'm looking at what I'm doing now? So I think that's a really great way to frame that.
Oh, I think that it's also in my list, but knowledge products, huh? I
Yeah.
remember it was how for a long time I couldn't forgive myself. But now because I know KM more, now I've been able to forgive myself. In the early days, we had a big project that wanted to document lessons learned. So, and it's a wrong way of approaching it, but I didn't understand it yet before. So we had a big chunk of funds that needed to be burned. Needed to be burned because it's the budget cycle. So just send the youngest person in the team to go around the project sites and document, right? And I'm like, "Oh, I don't want to go, but I have to." But it was the best experience of my life because I got to hear stories. I got to write it down and I got to feel the real pain points. Wrote it down, gave it to my comms manager, and the worst thing I heard was, sorry, we can't publish it because the objectives have changed. I'm like devastated because the people who I worked with then was like, where was the interview? I said, I know, but we submitted it, but the people up there, it was a reality. Objectives changed.
Mhm.
People at the top changed. So the mandate changed and it was just there. 3 big blocks of beautiful publications and you couldn't come back to it, right? Again, clinginess to the past. In this current program that I'm working on, we have another person who was me before. Where are the case studies? The ones that we did before. Why didn't you publish it? Because now we're the people sitting on it. I said, I get that, but we gotta review it and revise it for the current need today. The good thing is we have the budget to do, it, right? But then, every KM manager or officer feels guilt if at some point something beautiful doesn't get to see the light of day just because the changes or shifts, right? I guess that's my question for the future. Now, how do we manage those kinds of expectations of built aspirations? Because we have a beautiful product, but I mean, I can imagine our USAID colleagues, right? They have so many beautiful, like my friends in Bangkok who are in USAID,
Mhm. Mhm.
really, like overnight, pulled the plug.
Um,
It was just,
yeah.
it was terrible. And a lot of them are KM officers as well,
Yep.
documenting case studies, lessons learned, and all that. But just to go back to that, how do we make transformation happen? Forgive ourselves, I guess. Forgive ourselves because we are just one part among many in the whole KM ecosystem. And then where we are, we start building the transformation to go on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that the draw between you can have the best products and you can have the best strategy and you can have the best website, but if people aren't using them and if they're not
Yeah.
reading the products and if they're not, you know, so when you look at like website analytics, like you were mentioning, yeah, you can see how many people have visited your site, but does that mean that they're actually taking something away from it? Does that mean that they're actually learning from it? Does that mean that they're actually applying what they've like learned from your website? It doesn't tell you those things.
No.
And I think, like you mentioned, USAID, we saw on a massive scale, they had beautiful collaboration learning that overnight just went dark, that a
Yeah.
lot of people relied on, right? And so you can have all these things, but ultimately something can influence it. And if it's not ingrained in the culture and if it's not ingrained in the relationships that you have and the collaboration that you work with your colleagues, it's really hard, right? And I think that
Yeah.
that's, especially it's in every sector, but especially in the international sector where it is a lot of because you're getting money from other people, measurement, KPIs, what are the donors interested in? How do we keep up with this? How do we keep up with the politics? How do we keep up with the changing needs and the objectives? Like you said, they can change every 3 years, they can change overnight. And so it is that constant balance, like what you were saying, is it about another thing that you mentioned to us? Is it about information systems or is it about people, right? Is it about these things? How do they work together? And it's that forever balance. And especially in sectors where funds depend on
Mm.
what you're able to deliver, but there's literally lives on the line also, right? So it's this tension between how are you doing that work and how are you also showing that work, but then also how are you integrating that culture and how are you doing it on a shoestring budget? It's that forever, the things how to
But that's very relevant because information systems they're integral to any knowledge management system. I mean,
Yep.
it's 2026. We're in the digital era. We have to. And but then I'd love to hear more from your show here. More people talking about how do you simplify measurement and getting that measurement really relate. For example, okay, in the international realm, we have to have these big spreadsheets for the international and the institutional framework, logical framework, milestones we call it. But it would be great to go beyond numbers, but actually there's a recipe on how do you prove that those numbers mean something. And I've been thinking of that because one of the things that are in my, at least my plate, is knowledge metrics, right? So but it's blank. That's a beautiful thing. What do I need to measure?
Hmm.
And then how do I measure that? And then how do I prove that it's actually important? Okay. So I'll send you the link later on, but it's an experiment. We're going to hold a webinar just for our team, but we call it Forum Plus. It's like our brand and then Forum Plus. And we we say it's revolutionary, but we know this as knowledge managers. It's the interconnectivity of the digital pathways and the in-person pathways, right? So the theory is this: from the explicit digital pathway, which is a knowledge repository, it's literally all of your case studies online. And then we bring that out, feature it on a webinar where people will talk about it. And then after the webinar, there's a continued conversation online. And then we have how do you say, after action review, or what we call it, thematic exchange, where just the managers are saying, what are the pain points really? How are we going to use this knowledge product? Then move on to the in-person gathering, where we seriously look for events where we can broadcast our lessons learned. So it's looking at the connections there, then not inventing, but putting a number to it. For example, number of people attending the webinar. Does that equate to the number of people that we spoke to in the in-person event? And then what's the relationship between the two of that? And we're doing it this year because we have a big event happening that we are in control of in November. And we're launching the webinar this month. So we would have a good 6 months to play around with that, right? But it's new because it's not in our original metrics. We are not measured against that. We're only measured for the number of webinars we hold, the number of products we post online, and the number of people that we're pushing to that online platform. But we want to show our donor, or at least our sponsors, right? We want to show them that, hey, look, everything is connected. And
Mhm.
so with that, are you willing to push in more funds to make this ecosystem grow? So there's a kind of resource mobilization aspect tied to that. Are you, because we know this. After a project ends, they're going to start another project and fund another platform. You're like, you don't need to fund another platform. Why don't you just make the platform grow? And then use the culture around it, which is really Highlands flavor. It works for them. We don't create it because, let's face it, we house it in Europe. It's not going to talk to Wallis and Fortuna, for example.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, we're just thinking out loud there, but then it's like a frame like that. But maybe somebody with more experience can actually say, okay, here's the math, and here's the math translate, how the math translates in real life. That would be interesting because I don't know the math. I just know that, like when I hear it, I know it's gonna work because people are saying, oh, this worked, this worked. And that's where I come in as a KM specialist.
Yep. Okay, Rachel, we've got our marching orders. We need to find people that can talk about measurement.
All right. Yeah.
But in simple
So,
terms,
in
lay
simple
it
In
out.
terms,
simple terms, absolutely. No, yeah. No
yeah.
complicated terms.
All right. So if you're listening and you can talk about measurement in simple terms, write in definitely.
Well, I have a question for Rachel because
Sure.
Rachel, like, we're working with organizational talent, right?
Yeah.
Here's one of our problems in, at least in the KM realm. In a project, we hire out certain activities to experts. Okay.
Mhm.
But we have difficulty because those experts by virtue of the institutional arrangements, are always, how do you say, output orientated.
Sure.
Yeah, yes. But we want to be able to pull together a set of experts that we can draw on, but we're not very good at it. How
Mm.
do we, it's like contract one, contract two, okay, here's a database, but there's really no continuity. How do we build that in? I mean, for all of this.
You mean like from a like a reciprocity standpoint or like from a hmm, I I find that I I've been lucky where I've had a good community around me where I've been able to just kinda tap it and pull people in from the experts. I mean, some of it is I mean, even with this call for speakers for the podcast, we reached out and we had people just kinda respond. And then as far as pulling people in, like, for supports for projects or, it just in my experience or for, subcontractors or things like that, I've been able to pull even if I don't know them well, some of it is referrals based on people that I know. It's all networking. It's all that being able to tap on the community and being able to pull from other experts that I know. So from a reciprocity standpoint, it's having that solid community around you and being able to almost use them like a lending library. So thinking about it from that standpoint, that's kind of how I would start to build that, I think. Like so
So it's
I
more relational, right? Not just
yeah.
transactional.
It's not transactional. I
Excellent.
mean, if it starts to become transactional, then I start to phase them out, if I'm being completely honest, because I am very relational. I mean, there are times where there has to be that transactional nature for very specific roles. But I don't really put myself in positions or in projects where I'm going to need the transactional piece because I am so relational.
Yeah,
I mean, there is that time and place where I do need that transaction, like
really important. And I don't know how much time we have, but one of the things that also challenged me, okay,
yeah,
is this relationship between the communications unit, the
yes,
IT unit, and KM officers. Because we say KM
yeah,
unit, I really don't think, well, okay, KM unit, right? Because
sure,
sometimes some organizations are very fortunate to have chief KM officer, then you have a KM manager, and then other associates under knowledge management. And I'm working with somebody right now who's leading that. It's really great. But then maybe a next podcast episode, or you're going to feature
yeah,
somebody from comms realm, because it's like this: communications planning is treated differently by comm specialists from KM planning. Remember my story earlier. In our project, we don't have a dedicated KM person. We don't have a dedicated comms person. Okay?
right,
But then we have to tell them, give them the impression that yes, we're connected, but we're distinct. What's your experience on that? Like
yeah,
how do you build? Brittany, I know you.
So at World Vision, I was the knowledge manager for so each of the different teams had a knowledge management focal point back in the day. So I was on the advocacy team, so I was the knowledge management advisor for the advocacy team, the global advocacy team at World Vision International. I worked with a colleague who was internal comms. And the way that our manager, made the distinction was KM has the content and comms has the channels. And I think and that's a very simplified way to think about it. And we made sure that when we all, when the global advocacy team met with our regional advocacy teams, we had obviously all of the advocacy staff, but we had comms involved. And there was myself and other knowledge management focal points that were in the room because we all needed to be able to talk to each other because the advocacy staff had the technical content, basically, had the technical knowledge. Comms had the channels of how we're going to tell that story, how we're going to turn that technical content into products, into things that our donors and our supporters want to see. The knowledge management folks were there to say, oh, yes, and we learned all of this other stuff that we can incorporate into this content that then comms can then package and push out. And so that became a very strong network, if you will. Like that ecosystem worked really well because we had our distinct, we understood what we brought to the table, but we all worked together. It wasn't like in isolation. That took a while to get there, and it wasn't necessarily replicated in across other teams, but that was something, at least from the advocacy side, that worked really well. So I think that, and especially in the international development in the international sector space, there is a lot of this advocacy. We have to tell stories all the time because we are looking for funds, we're looking for support, we're looking for to raise awareness, all this stuff. And you need all of these people. You need IT because they have the platforms that help you push out the stuff. Comms has the channels that helps you package different things for different audiences as well. And then you as knowledge management, you know where the content is. It's not just numbers, it's not just data, right? It's the knowledge and it's the lessons learned. And you've been involved in this. And so you're able to kind of bridge those things and put them together. That's how I have seen it work. Whether that is, immediately transferable to other sectors, I don't know. Rachel, I don't know if you've seen things as far as having a different sector background, right? But at
Yeah.
least in my experience, that has been something that has worked. And I think that if that can be something that goes forward and being able to, because we're all trying to move, and especially when you work for a mission minded organization, you can always call upon, hey guys, we're all on the same team trying to work for the same goal. At the World Food Program, that was zero hunger, right? That was the SDG number 2 about zero hunger. It's how are we're all working towards the same thing. So we don't need to fight for our own space. I bring this to the table, you bring this, let's all work together because my role as a knowledge manager helps give rich content to you as a comms person that you can then push out and tell a much richer story with, hey, not just here's a litany of things that we did, but here's what we learned and here's how we learned it and here's how we applied it and here's how it made us better. And that's much richer content that donors and people want to see. Everyone knows that the World Food Program does a lot of things. We don't have to list that out in an article. No one's going to read that. What they will pay attention to is if we said, hey, we did this and it didn't really work that well, but we learned that if we do this differently, we can deliver food to this community 7 days sooner, which changes lives and is able to help us do XYZ. Donors love that. That is a much richer story and it speaks to more of the nature of what the World Food Program does, right? So it's my job, helps you do your job, helps us tell the story that moves us all towards this shared goal that we have, right? So that's something that I have seen work really well. It's a lot of relationship building. It's a lot of, hey, how can we help each other? And let's have this conversation. And I'm not stepping on your toes. We're all trying to enhance each other's work, right? But that's something that I've seen work really well.
Thank you. I mean, I know that time is running. See, we could talk about this all day.
I told you we could talk for hours.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
amazing. KM is all about people.
Yes.
KM is all about transformation. And it's about the integrality or integratedness of everything.
Yes.
And that is so true. And that seems like a good place to wrap it. But we would love to have you back on. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
No, and thank you
Yeah.
for reaching out. And I think it was when I read your email and you mentioned Soylent Green, I did have to learn that. I had to look that up. But when you mentioned the pop
I know
culture
it.
reference, I was like, oh, we're going to get along great. This is going to be fantastic.
Yeah. This episode of Not Another KM Podcast was edited by me, Rachel Teague. It was produced by Rachel Teague and Brittany Persinger. Our fantastic theme music was created by Chase Tremaine Music. Questions, comments, quips, quotes, or conundrums? Reach out to us at nakmpod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support.